Hello and welcome everyone. And I'm thrilled to have you join this session today. My name is Stella and I'm the coordinator for Feminism and Folklore 2025, and I'll be your host for today. I'm being joined by other colleagues. They would introduce themselves as we go along. This is to inform you that this session will be recorded for documentation purposes and also for those who would love to watch it again. And if you do not wish to be recorded, please, you may turn off your camera and participate via chat. We also encourage that we mute our mics and use the raise hand buttons when we need to speak. Also, we would like to inform you that the friendly space policy applies to this event. For those who are new to Wikimedia online and in-person events, the friendly space policies are guidelines for in-persons and virtual Wikimedia community gatherings. There would also be a Q&A session as well to accommodate all the questions you have at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions relating to the workshop and campaign, you can drop them in the chat space or raise your hands at the end of the session. So it is my pleasure once again to welcome you to today's all-important session on finding and creating missing gaps on gender disparities in folklore and history. This discussion is part of the Feminism and Folklore Initiative, a global movement dedicated to documenting and preserving diverse cultural narratives, especially those of women and gender diverse individuals on Wikipedia. Folklore has long been a powerful tool for preserving, history, tradition, values. However, many of the stories passed down through generations have often been told from a singular perspective, one that overlooks or minimizes the voices and contributions of women. Feminism and folklore seeks to change that by ensuring that these missing narratives are not only found, but also shared with the world through accessible and reliable platforms like that of Wikipedia. So our agenda for today will be to do some welcome introduction, which I'm currently doing. And then we'll go to finding and creating the missing gender gaps on gender disparity. That will be done by Rosie, the Q&A, and then contributions from you participants, and then closing remarks. So this session is not just about identifying the gender disparities in folklore and history, but also about equipping ourselves with the skills to research, document, and bridge these gaps, knowledge gaps. By doing so, we ensure that the stories of women and other marginalized groups are no longer left out of historical records. So I do encourage you all to actively participate and ask questions, collaborate as we work together making history today. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. So we all know Rosie, but I'm going to say a little, thing about her. Rosie, as we all call her, and has been a Wikimedia editor since 2007. Rosie is a Wikipedia editor and also an admin since 2009, and prior to and prior of and a prior member of the Wikimedia Foundation Board of Trustees, from 2021 to 2024. She co-founded Women in Red 2014, a project that focuses on improving Wikimedia's content agenda. It was also shortlisted for the ITU UN Women Gem Tech Award in 2016. In the same year, she was honored as the Wikipedian of the Year. Rosie is a visiting scholar at the Northeastern University, Boston, where her research focuses on pre-XSC women writers. She also serves as a community engagement manager at the University of Queensland, Australia, on the research project measuring the gender gap. In 2018, Rosie was knighted in part because of her Wikipedia work. She makes her home in California. Please let's give Rosie a round of virtual applause as I pass the mic to her. Rosie, I'll share your slide now so I'm passing the mic over to you now. So please let me stop the slide and then add that.
Thank you so much, Stella, and good day, everyone. So as Stella has said, I'm Rosie Stevenson Goodnight. I'm the Wikipedia editor who uses the name Rosie Stepp. I'm at a festival right now in Texas in the United States. So please pardon any extra noise that you might hear around me or the poor lighting as I try to find a room that would be quiet enough for today. As part of the Feminism and Folklore Advocacy campaign, I'm delighted to be with you. And I'll be talking about stirring the pot, curating myths and gaps on gendered folklore disparities. Please, if you will, hold your questions till the end. But if you have a question about a particular slide, you'll see that all slides have a number in the bottom right-hand corner. You can write that slide number in the chat, and then when I'm done, the moderator can refer to a slide number and they can pull up the slide and we can go over it. All right, next slide, please. So this stirring the pot topic, this is not a simple or easy topic. And you will see that I will literally be stirring the pot as I cover the items in our agenda. You can see them listed here. Let's get started. Next slide, please. While some of you are seasoned Wikimedians, others here might be newcomers. And so I want to assure that we all start off on the same page with some similar understandings. Next slide. What is Wiki? What does Wiki mean? Well, Wiki is the Hawaiian word for fast or quick. What you're looking at here is a wiki bus in Hawaii. The word was coined in 1995 by Ward Cunningham, who invented the editing language the Wikipedia editors use. That editing language, Wiki Markup, is based on a model of openly editable content, otherwise known as a wiki. Next slide. 4 years later, Jimmy Wales co-founded Wikipedia in 2001 with Larry Sanger. So if Wikipedia had a motto or a mission statement, it would probably be this quote from Jimmy. Imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. That's what we're doing. I might say probably not all human knowledge, all notable human knowledge, because nobody cares about the name of my cat. Next slide. Wikipedia has gender problems. Let's start with who is reading Wikipedia. As of 2023, Wikipedia made up only 25, sorry, having problems here with my mic. As of 2023, Wikipedia made up only 25% of all readers. Next slide. Next slide. Can you move to the next slide, slide number 7? Who is editing Wikipedia? I think you're still on the reader slide. If you can go to the next slide about editors. There we go. Editors, there we go. Who is editing Wikipedia? As of 2024, women make up only 13% of all Wikipedia editors. Next slide. 76 years ago, Simone de Beauvoir wrote, "It is not women's inferiority that has determined their historical insignificance. It is their historical insignificance that has doomed them to inferiority." So when we talk about Wikipedia, Wikimedia Commons, and so forth, we must address the role of society, as Wikipedia is a reflection of society, what society deems notable enough to publish. Next slide. So when I tell you that only 20% of biographies on English Wikipedia are about women, maybe you aren't surprised. It's better than some old encyclopedias, such as the 1957 version of the Diccionario Biográfico, Geográfico e Histórico de Venezuela, but we can do better, and that's why we're here. Next slide. I'm going to start by drilling down to identification, documentation, and amplification of folk narratives. That's actually why we're here, right? Next slide. I will start with opportunities we have in our work with oral storytelling. What do I mean by this? Mythology is an art form that was used in the ancient eras to explain everything from seasons to the origin of the universe, to life, to death. Myths from ancient mythologies from around the world represent women, gender, sexuality. They socialize audiences into norms that express that period. Your ability, therefore, to document oral storytelling today, our grandmother's oral stories, is easier than ever. How are we including it in our feminism and folklore work? Next slide, number 12. One way we can do it is podcasting. It's an opportunity that presents itself to us. Hearing our grandmothers share their stories is possible in a way that wasn't available a generation or more ago. If we aren't podcasting feminism and folklore, let's add that to the list of untapped opportunities. Next slide. At the same time, we're mindful that gender norms and definitions vary, and that makes it difficult, not only with discussions on podcasts and elsewhere about feminist folklore, but also how we research topics and find sources in order to write Wikipedia articles or even to take photos. Next slide. Indeed, we acknowledge the difficulty to find those sources, but there are those among us who are doing something about it. There are those among us who are recording oral histories in things like published books, in monographs, in slide decks, and more. Madeleine Albright, who was the United States Secretary of State, said, "It took me quite a long time to develop a voice, and now that I have it, I'm not going to be silent." In other words, we don't have to sit idle and say, "I can't find more sources." Tell the story yourself. Next slide. And if you don't, different storytellers and writers with different ideologies, with different ways of understanding the world, are going to be reflected in the stories that they create. Some fairy tales are written by men, right? Some fairy tales are self-consciously feminist. Some are reactionary. Some are definitely stay at home where you belong or you will be eaten and you deserve it. While others are, yeah, pick up the sword and pick up a crown. You can rule the world. Most of the fairy tales are somewhere in between. Which ones are you documenting? Which ones are missing? Next slide. I'm going to hit this hard. I'm going to talk about folk as a feminist issue, and I want to share some insights with you about this. Next slide. As feminism is concerned with the emancipation of all beings, so folk is concerned with everyone's right to make it, take part in it, and to self-organize. Slide 18. Folk is the communion we find with others in our own terms. Next slide. Folk makes use of whatever are readiest on hand, materials, people, time, energy, us. Next slide. The folk arts, traditionally folk music, folk dance, folk customs, please, these are only a fraction of the term's full capacity. Next slide. The absence of records, of visibility, does not indicate the absence of activity or importance. Next slide. It is our job to uncover and hold the space for things not historically considered important enough to make it into the books. Next slide. Mind you, folk isn't a value judgment. It's not inherently the old stuff or the stuff under threat. It is also not a specific set of songs and dances, not only those songs and dances. Some practices have a longer history than others, but this says little about how meaningful they are to the people who perform them. This does not dictate when and what we can write about. Next slide. Mind you, folk is not inherently a force for good. So don't box yourself into thinking that's the only type of folk worth your effort. Other people's folk will sometimes include things we find abhorrent, things like racism, sexism, and so forth. But documenting it holds onto threads that are otherwise lost. Next slide. Politics can dictate who has access to what folk, or what folk we can read about, what folk we can talk about, what folk we can write about. Next slide. What we're doing here today is reclaiming the woman's point of view for folk. Research. What does the research say about that? Wikipedia edited, go back one. Wikipedia, edited by volunteers, read by billions, shapes AI. It's a core training data set for large language models, meaning it directly influences content generated by LLMs. As LLM use grows, so does Wikipedia's impact on public knowledge. Next slide. Research studies have demonstrated the significance of women's oral traditions as a vital source for understanding their lived experiences, their cultural contributions, their strategies of resistance in male-dominated societies. Next slide. Hundreds of fairy tales and stories have been collected by AI from around the world and run through an AI tool to identify patterns in the sequence of events or actions experienced by those characters. Each event then was assigned a likelihood to establish how frequently it was associated with male or female characters. This tool did not deal with minority genders. From a total of more than 33,000 events, less than 1/3 were about female characters, and the female characters were most likely found to be engaged in domestic tasks, things like grooming, cleaning, cooking, sewing, while male characters were connected to events that recorded success or failure or aggression. What are we writing about? What are we training the LLMs in what we write about on Wikipedia? Next slide. A performance-centered perspective emphasizes measuring and improving results, focusing on accountability and fostering a culture where high performance is valued and celebrated. Ergo, does your feminism and folklore work capture include things like girls' names, political cartoons, quilting, preachers, daily housework, goddesses, tall tales, the birth experience? If not yet, could 2025 be the year that we include these topics in feminism and folklore? Next slide. Folks, folk is all around you. Check out my earrings. Check out my necklaces. Check out my bracelets. If you'd like more specific examples, let's go. Next slide. I was born in the United States, but my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors, They are from Serbia. That makes me a part of the Serbian diaspora. The Serbian diaspora is depicted in this map. And I'm going to use the Serbian diaspora, me, as a way of exploring how folklore shifts through acculturation, assimilation, and integration, and why that makes our wiki work in folklore vital. Next slide. If you're keeping track, I've already mentioned topics that you can cover in folklore: girls' names, cartoons, quilting, preachers, housework, goddesses, tall tales, the birth experience. And now, a little bit about clothes and food and religion and language, music, dance, rituals, textiles, and art. Next slide. What an interesting photo of a group of Serbians from very long ago. Look at how differently they are dressed. Folklore style refers to the traditional dress of a particular country or region that is passed down from generation to generation. It's the textiles, the dyes, the embroidery, the embellishments in the area's customs and mores and practices. I don't think there's a Wikipedia article in any language that tells you what I'm about to say. But when I was a child, my mother and my grandmother, who lived with us too, had a saying. Whenever they bought me a new piece of clothing, they would touch the fabric and say, "Kolko žica, tolko godinica." It means, for every thread, may you live so many years. That's an example of an oral tradition, undocumented on Wiki. So far. Next slide. Food culture are strongly influenced by the environment, the traditions, and the resources that is around them. Those foods that you can buy, the spices you can buy in the stores around you. While this photo was taken of a typical folk meal in Serbia, I can say that my mother and grandmother would make the same meal in my childhood home in Los Angeles, California. We have a photo here. Where's the Wikipedia article? Next slide. Folk religion, also called popular or indigenous religion, refers to religious practices and beliefs that are unique to a specific group or ethnicity, and they're transmitted through oral tradition or through formal texts or institutions. Did you know Serbs are the only people who celebrate something called Slava? There's a Wikipedia article about Slava, but maybe not yet the everything that is incorporated in Serbian Slava, particularly the things that you see in this photo. Next slide. Folk speech refers to the dialect or style of speaking that is unique to people living within a specific geographic area and taken with the diaspora somewhere else. The folk speech of an area may be differentiated from other regions by variations maybe in grammar or phonetic like pronunciation or lexical like word usage features. Next slide. Folklore music refers to traditional music genres passed down through families and communities, often characterized by simple melodies and narrative verses like folk songs and traditional music from various cultures, such as these are Roma performers of Serbia in the present day. Next slide. Folklore dance, we've probably heard about that. Those are the traditional dances rooted in customs and beliefs and stories of a specific cultural region. And they're often performed during festivals or celebrations or cultural events or just because you want to. Here you see Serbian people in Serbia dancing the kolo on a bright summer day. Next slide. Here we see a still from a documentary film, The Magical World of Vlax, in which loaves of bread are placed in a cosmic arrangement for the commemoration ceremony during the pouring of water for the deceased in a Serbian village. Next slide. Textile art has a long folklore tradition. According to Wikipedia, mention of textiles in folklore is ancient, and its lost mythic lore probably accompanied the early spread of this art. So many threads, right? Next slide. I've tried to speak slowly, fastly to get through everything I wanted to share with you so that we do have time for Q&A. This appendix lets you know all the sources I used in creating this presentation for you today. Next slide. And thank you very much. I'm open to any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Rosie. Thank you so much for this. When you were talking about clothes and something regarding back home in Serbia, it just took my mind back to how even kings or chiefs are installed in my parts of the country, the role women play, the dance they have to perform, and other things they have to do before this is done, the kind of clothes they have to wear. And it's really giving me a lot of ideas on other things that I could actually add on um to this when I want to write about some of the stories. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't click a long time ago, but you saying this just took my mind back. This was just last month. It just took my mind back. And I'm like, oh, okay. I could actually, add this up. So thank you very much again, Rosie. And so please, if you do have questions, please do raise your hands or let's have them in the chat and then Rosie can answer them for you. So questions, please. Please do free unmute and ask your questions.
Okay, so let me go here. Uh, so Rosie, since various Wikimedians have a question that when it comes to oral traditions and oral histories, so how do we document it? So there are some times where people find it very hard to get the sources to write an article. So what could be the best way to start on wherein users can just write about the art narratives on Wikipedia?
Stephen, it's a great question. And here's just one answer. There could be others, but here's one of them. If you can't find the source, you can develop this on your own. Think outside the box. There's a group that started in 2018, a Wikipedia group it started by the name 1000 Women in Religion. They found that there were all of these articles about men in religious practice on Wikipedia and so few about women. And they couldn't find sources for things they thought were important. And so they decided to start developing the sources themselves. They started interviewing women, writing up the interviews that they did, and publishing books and monographs. That group exceeded adding 1,000 women of religion into Wikipedia, and now they just call themselves Women in Religion. While they started in the US, they are all over the world now. So if you can't find the sources, you can create the sources. Interview your grandmothers regarding a myth, regarding a piece of traditional clothing, regarding a type of food that is traditionally eaten, and write it up. You don't have to publish it in a book, which might take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and might cost money. What you can do is publish it as a slide deck. Indicate in the first slide what food you're talking about. And then each grandmother that you interviewed who talked about it, quote her and have 10 slides of 10 women whose quotes, grandmothers whose quotes are there. Mind you, you'll need their permission if you use their name or quote them anonymously. And you can publish that on Wikimedia Commons. And there it is, so that the next person who sees it, maybe a journalist, is aware that there's something missing. And maybe the journalist interviews someone. And then we start having that documented. We start seeing it showing up in the media. What I'm saying is, think outside the box and start taking some things upon ourselves. So we are not sitting at the back of the bus waiting for society to write about things we think is important. We need to be at the front of the bus. We need to think, how do we document things where there are no sources, but there should be? Another option I suggested was podcasts. I have no idea how to do a podcast, but there are bright people in our wiki universe who do. Let's do podcasts and interview those grandmothers, those aunties who have information that isn't captured in sources or maybe is behind a paywall. And then we can use that information in the future someday. As I said, that's one answer. There may be others. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Rosie.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Rosie. Please, any other question? I think I saw is it Bashir or someone raised the hand earlier. Please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please. All right. If there are no other questions, Tyven, do you have any announcements or any information for us?
Yeah, so the Feminism and Folklore together with the Wiki Loves Folklore ends in the next 15 days. So I would urge all the coordinators and the uh, language uh, participants for the Feminism and Folklore to submit on their articles on Fountain or the Campus tool, so that we don't have a uh, last moment rush. So all the best, since these are just for more 15 days that there. So yeah, Bashir.
All right, thank you very much. Good day, everyone. Actually, I'm not fully informed about this wiki talk. Look, but from the information, from the explanation you just finished, I came to realize that we are dealing with culture, everything culture, like music, dance, clothing, cuisine, and the rest. So let's say I want to participate in this wiki folklore, and I have local traditional or cultural things I want to add. How can you track my activities, and how 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 will you guys know that I've contributed the wiki folklore? Is there any hashtag or any dashboard or any particular page dedicated to for the events? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, so there is a Wikimedia Commons page that you can check on. You need to create a Wikipedia account, and then you can just upload your images, audios, as well as videos about your local culture and traditions to Wikimedia Commons. So we have this wherein you can put the descriptions and explain about the local tradition to us, and also your country, so that we can know that this tradition is from your country.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. It's quite understandable.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I think we are within time, and I would love to say a very big thank you again to Rosie and to everyone for participating today. Today has really been an eye opener, and getting other ideas, like Rosie said, exploring how to use podcasts, and clothes and oral traditions um in folklore. So I really, really want to say thank you. I know I really don't know what to say. Rosie has always been somebody that when you call on would, run and come assist in whatever way she can. So thank you once again, Rosie, for being here. Thank you for always being a support. You've always been a support when it comes to me and others. Thank you so much. I'm just overwhelmed right now. So thank you once again. And
Thank
thank you,
you,
everyone.
Stella.
Thank
For
you to
having
everyone
me.
for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Appreciate being
So,
here.
yeah. So, on behalf of the team, I want to say thank you again and then good night. Have a good weekend and God bless. Bye.